Hello subscribers and visitors to my channel. My last video performed way better than I ever thought it could have, so I am interested in posting something a little bit different because I'm in the early phases of producing content for this channel, so I see no reason why I can't mix it up a little bit and see what else might catch on and what people might like. You know, I'm still running through a back catalog of content, and it's going to transition into more entertainment focused themes here in the future. I will always be interested in going back to educational topics. I spent a great deal of my career in education, and there is no limit to the content you can get out of the amassed knowledge of humanity. So here's a speech I gave about animal anatomy and how to capture it if you don't really have a good hand for drawing. Thank you, and I hope you enjoy.
What a lot of people might not know about me is I spent a large part of my collegiate career learning to study animals by digging up their bones. You know, you dig up the skeleton of an animal, and there's so much information in that in terms of the way the animal lived, and the way it looked, the way it moved, lots of stuff like that. And while I was in college, I had the opportunity to take a class by Mauricio Anton, who is a very well-known international paleo artist. Let's see, let me blow this up if I can. I think full screen is that full screen? Yes. So Mauricio Anton, he was an artist. First and foremost, he was an artist. But his specific interest was kind of elevating animal art to the point where it accurately reflected that extinct animal. And what his goal was is he wanted to make better artists out of the scientists studying the animals, and he wanted to make better scientists out of the artists that were basically commissioned to paint an animal that nobody actually put eyes on themselves. And I'm not doing any of the extinct animals here because a large part of his class was actually just modern animals, so horses, dogs, lions, things like that. And that's what we'll talk about here. But yeah, he talked to us about using using drawing, and again, a lot of people probably know this already. You can use drawing and better increase your eye to mind to hand connection. But a lot of people, you know, they are intimidated by it, or they don't think that they don't know where to start with it. So what I'll basically present is a methodical approach, very left brain, but a very methodical approach to making your animal illustrations look, and your animal art, look very, very authentic. And when I do my stuff, I'll pass the mic over to my wife, Brianna, who is also a very accomplished animal artist, and she's going to talk about how you preserve the magic and wonder and still make it look like a piece of artwork, not just an anatomical drawing. So that's kind of the aim for what our presentation is going to be. Mostly to teach, it's an atlas for animal anatomy for artists. So a book specifically designed and written to help artists draw better and paint better animals. So what this book basically is it is full of, let's see, where's my Okay, so it is full of these really, I'll be honest, kind of boring animal profiles, but they're useful. It's where you have to start. You know, if you're going to draw an animal or paint an animal for the first time, you wouldn't probably want to start without understanding the nature of the animal itself. So a lot of these are these skin profiles, and basically what the main goal is to understand what's underneath, basically. You understand the way the animal functions, then it helps you understand the form. That was a big moniker of vertebrate paleontology. Form follows function. So the form of the animal has to match with what the animal is doing out there in the wild. So you have your general horse illustration, and what you do, and it's a really, like I said, any rube can do it. If I could learn it, any rube can do it. all it really would take is to print out something like that and then take a piece of tracing paper and you would overlay it over the image. Let me get my horse example. Yeah, you can overlay it over the image. And then you're basically just tracing the outside. You know, tracing paper is a wonderful cheat sheet, and you get basically an outline of the animal's profile. And then once you're done with that, you take that tracing paper away and you layer it over the skeleton of the animal. And then this is where it gets real, where I'm really going to start to nerd out. Let's see, where is my pointer? Yes. So, the biggest thing that I can tell this group about what you need to pay attention to, and animators actually know this too, is paying attention to your bony landmarks. So the bony landmarks are the places where and you can see the traced outline of the profile here. The bony landmarks are the places where the bones are right up against the skin. Yeah. And you all have them too. So if you just take a second to feel around you, it's like the jawbones, your elbows, stuff like that. Anybody that owns a dog could probably tell you that too. The ones that I like to start with are the hips, always, because animal hips are shaped very, very differently than human hips. They're these really, really long, almost a triangular shape that kind of cut diagonally across the rump of the animal. The other things to pay attention to are the legs, because that's the thing. If you paint an animal and the legs are not in proper proportion, it's going to look kind of funny. And it might not, and not funny in a good way. It'll look funny as in like somebody's going to scratch their head and wonder like, what, something about that doesn't look right. And the problem with that is that those things are so subtle that people might not know why it looks funny, even, because this is all like subconscious stuff, Humans are really, really good at picking out stuff that doesn't really make sense. But anywho, so other bony landmarks are the knees. So what I always point out on animals, especially like horses that run all day, is that the knees of the animal are actually right up close to the trunk of the body. And half of the animal's leg is actually its foot. Because these animals, they don't walk with flat feet like we do. They walk up on their toes. So there's a whole extra bend and zigzag in the animals that if you don't really have an understanding of, it can be really easy to not get right. Other things to pay attention to, muscle distribution. So if you'll notice, there's a lot less going on this front part of the back legs than there is on the back half of the back legs. And anybody that's seen a horse gallop will know that that's basically kicking. I was actually just chatting with somebody about the horses and their powerful kicks. Well, that's where it comes from. It comes from the powerful rump muscles that are back there. So it's important to get that right because that's the way the animal moves. And then the other thing is the chest. So what a lot of people, and then this is going to be the really funny part of the presentation because I'm about to demonstrate. When you're an animal that walks on four legs, and especially like on your toes, what are the muscles that are using to actually hold yourself up? It's the chest muscles. And when you propel yourself off your back legs and catch yourself on your front legs, that's all the chest muscles in the front half of the front legs there. So you want to make sure you get that right, because again, form follows function. And then the last thing that I'll point out on this one is that animals don't really have a core, like core muscles like humans do. Again, because they carry all their weight mostly with their front and back leg muscles. The core muscles of an animal like this, it's really more to just keep everything cinched up tight. It doesn't really do anything to hold up the animal like our core muscles do for us. So that's a little bit of the horse. I've got a couple other examples, although a lot of these are going to be kind of repetitive. The next one I've got, okay, so dog. Dogs are very, very similar in that they walk on their toes, so that's very important to get right. Their legs are way more elongated because they're running animals. And the thing I wanted to point out with a couple of things with this one, the chests of these animals are these really barrel-shaped parts of it in the front. And what a lot of people might not know is that for other animals like reptiles, their backbone, each backbone actually has a rib. to it. Whereas in mammals, it's divided into portions and eventually the ribs only go that far. And there's a really interesting reason for that. Animals like these, their backs are designed to bend like this, to move in that gallop. What that allows the animals to do is it actually allows them to breathe while they run. That kind of, you take a breath in as your back extends this way, and then you land and you can breathe out, and it helps them run very, very long distances. So, the reason I'm pointing this out, going back to like extinct animals and stuff like that, when I watch these like Jurassic Park movies, and I see these like the velociraptors like running like for these like really long distances and stuff, it's a bunch of crap. Like those
Hello all you viewers to the channel. Let me just say that I'm going to take a moment to pause right here and interject a little bit of my new thoughts on this subject. Now, this was a long time ago that I studied vertebrate paleontology, and from my years in academia, I remember you just can't make an outlandish claim like that and really not actually make sure you know what the hell you're talking about. So I made sure I did a little digging, and yeah, the narrative holds up. So it was something that I remember learning way back in the day, early in my career, and it was one of the most vivid memories in school that I had, but a lot of time has passed. So I don't know if it's one of those things that my brain just kind of reproduced a bunch of times, and you know how it like creates an error every time a memory is reproduced in the brain. Pretty sure that's a thing too. Don't know. But anyway, just wanted to make sure that I put that out there. I actually went through ChatGPT. Don't judge me. My hands hurt. It saves me typing. Probably going to post that on my website if I ever finish building it. Anyway, that's all I wanted to say. Back to the speech.
It is. No, it really is. Those animals don't move like that. They don't breathe like that. Anybody that knows anything about like lizards and reptiles knows that they go in like short bursts because they have to hold their breath while they're running because they move like this. They can't move like this. They move like this. So these are the really important details that can really elevate your animal art to the next level and really make it professional looking and convincing looking. So the other thing that I would point out, when you're looking at how to draw a face, and this book that I'm getting these images from, they have all kinds of oblique angles and underneath angles and top angles, and they have the skulls and everything, like hyper-focused just on the skull. I didn't include that for this presentation. I figured if anyone's interested, they can check out the book. But on this one, just because it looks so good, what you're looking for is shadows, basically. Animal anatomy photos are always lit, and this is a professional thing that I didn't know about before, but they're always lit in the upper left corner of the staging of your photo. Don't know why. That's just it's a combination of it just looks good, and it's just a common recommended practice. Probably with other photographs too, not just anatomy. Well, what happens is you wind up getting shadows casted in the place where you have concave, scooped out sections of bone, and in those sections is where your muscles are located. Your jowl muscles, your cheekbones, all of that basically just gets rounded out for the muscles of the dog, and when you do that, you wind up with a pretty convincing looking face of your animal just by thinking of that. When you do this technique, you do the trace outline, and then you take away your tracing paper, and then lay it over your skeleton profile, and then you'll have one drawing with the profile and then the skeleton on it. You can go one step further, and then fill out all of the muscle attachments. It's basically connect the dots, which is pretty easy because you know that concave sections like this and here would go, down here, and you kind of just wind up tracing the muscle attachment points. And you can even use different colored pencils in order to really understand the difference between what is bone, what is muscle. And in this class that I took, they went so far as like tendons, and ligaments, and all that stuff. You probably don't need to go all out like that to really just train your brain to understand these animals enough to draw them. Where is my, there it is. So yeah, that is a dog. I have some other examples here, but that's basically the main things I wanted to say about that. Yeah, a lion. Lion is pretty cool because their feet are set up quite differently. They got toes that are kind of zigzags that give that kind of retracted claw look. But they are still up, walking on their toes in the back, and in the front too. So yeah, this would be like the elbow of the animal. This would be the ankle, and these would be the toes. So even though it looks flat-footed, it's really not. It's just the way that this particular animal is set up. Yeah, I can't think a whole lot more about that. Oh, well, that's all right. It is a bear, a recognizable animal here. Similar things, and so all of those previous photos came from like this specific book that I'm talking about, but this one I just pulled off the internet. So, you know, common creative license stuff, not too hard to find, but you get basically the same understanding. And the main thing about the bear, which I thought is really cool, is the bear leg is actually more similar to a human leg than any of the other animals that I've talked about. You know, you've got the long femur bone right here, and these guys are walking way more flat-footed than any of the other animals. So when you look at that, it actually looks more like, you know, a human leg than you might think, which is just kind of funny because when it's covered in the fur and the fat and the skin, those details can escape you. So you have to develop a kind of X-ray vision to really understand, like, okay, you want to do a bear in a setting, it's got to be standing on its feet in the right way. Because if not, again, it's going to look a little funny. A couple other things too. So once you have those basic profiles down, some of you may have heard this, but Edward Muybridge, I think, this is like 1850s stuff. But they did a lot, like back when film was like incredibly new, one of the first things they did with it was filming a bunch of animals running. And I'm probably not going to go up there for this one. But yeah, so you can basically do the same technique, but with an action pose, and then it'll take you one step further in understanding if you want to do not just a horse, but a running horse, you can better understand the way that it's actually supposed to move, and the way it lands on its feet, the way it kicks with its back legs, all that good stuff. So again, these are, you know, it's all on the internet. I'm pretty sure this stuff is old enough that it's public domain stuff, so you can base your stuff off that. And then in the class that I took, we had to choose one, and I chose this one of a running dog. And this is what I came up with. And the skull was a little, I had some issues with that, agreeably. And he also pointed out that my rib cage was too small. Again, because there's no core muscles there on the dog per se. So I didn't quite bring the chest out enough in this section, or the bones were a little too close because there are the muscles there. And yeah, so I want to say also too, you can go full on detailed like this because it was an anatomy class basically. But notice for the backbone, I didn't bother doing the backbones like perfectly right. It's just basically like this is just the main backbone of the animal. I didn't really bother like knowing exactly how many vertebrae needed to be there. You just need to understand the way it curves and stuff. And you can see I started, I don't know if I didn't have to, or if I don't remember it, but you can see how you fill out that bony crest on the top of its head, all gets rounded out with muscles on either side. So the skull of the animals, look like they got a shark fin on the top of their head. It's really strange. We don't have that, but it all gets rounded out because there's just big, powerful biting muscles on there. But yeah, so yeah, you can, as I said, if you use these kind of more methodical approaches, anybody can draw an animal. You really can, because they're very understandable creatures, you know, just knowing a little bit about them. And then, yeah, so the reason, you know, why is this important? Why is this important? Can anybody tell me what's wrong with this image?
It looks like he has all of his weight on one leg.
Brilliant. Excellent. That is exactly what I was going for. Yeah, and so yeah, I could tell the artist this is a book cover, and I could tell the artist was going for a really exciting, action scene type thing, and that's cool. And I wouldn't make such a big deal about it, except that this was on the cover of what was a like an elementary school nonfiction textbook, basically. This is like a textbook for children, and they illustrated the animal in a way that it's just. Have you ever watched an elephant run? Like, actual executives and actual artists actually had meetings and approved that. And for someone here that doesn't even know a lot about animals, they can point out, like, that looks funny. Like, that looks very strange. And they can go for the kind of action scene that they were going for, but without compromising and making such an error like that. If you wanted to do a scene of humans hunting a mammoth or something, you can do that. You didn't have to. I don't care how rushed you were. You didn't have to design this composition like this with all of its weight on one leg. Right. These animals just don't move like that. So yeah, Brianna's sick of hearing me talk about it because I've been talking about this for like 2 years. That it's just it could have been elevated a lot more. And I kind of have, so this is a good transition where she'll talk about more of the fun stuff. This is some work that Brianna did, and I would argue that this was a better example of how you can do something really interesting and pretty, but without making really egregious errors. Like notice the rump of the deer and the knees being in the proper place relative to the trunk. Notice the size and scale of like mice down here, right next to rabbits, and a big animal like a moose. And the other thing that I would point out too before I pass the mic officially to Brianna is looking at the hoof of the moose. So a lot of people might not know if they're not biologists, but the number of toes that an animal has is actually one of the ways that they're grouped into categories, like groups of animals. And you see there's 2 hooves right here. I suspect that someone that might not think about that, especially if you're an artist or an illustrator, you might wind up drawing that as if it was a horse's hoof. And just like with the running mammoth on one leg, someone would look at that and be like, God, that looks funny. Like, I don't know what it is about it, but there's just something about it that looks off. And it's just it's not a whole lot, but it's a little detail that when you get right, again, it elevates it to a quality that's just really, really good. And it doesn't have to mean that the fun is sucked out of the art. Because sometimes when I think about that presentation, I was like, am I just sucking the fun out of art by talking about science and all that stuff? Maybe not, because you can do both. And that's what I'll bring Brianna up to talk about her experience with animal art.
And that's the end of the video. So if you made it to the end, I congratulate you. Thank you for sticking with it for as long as you did. I know it is longer than my previous entries by quite a bit, but not too dissimilar from my master's thesis defense, which I trimmed down and posted into a 25-minute long video a long time ago. So it's shorter than that. Other videos I will try to keep around the 10-minute length. I think that works out best for YouTube and for audiences in general, and there's really no need to keep making a point after 10 minutes, really, when the point's been made. So thank you so much, and look forward to seeing you in the next video.